As we said last time about Abraham Lincoln, trying to lead this country in that dreadful Civil War, he had visitors from practically every denomination across the nation going to him and telling him what the will of God was. And finally, in exasperation, remember we said this? He said, "Why is it that everyone knows God's will except me? And I'm the one who has to make the decision." His experience was a sense of the absence of God. Jesus told them, "I don't know when God is coming. Neither do we." It was like the flood, Jesus said. People were eating and drinking. They were marrying and giving in marriage. They were going about their normal lives. They were so immersed in time that they forgot about eternity. Then the flood came. They didn't know. They didn't know. Two working in a field. One taken, one left. Like a kidnapping. Nobody knew to prepare for that. Like a burglar coming in the middle of the night. He doesn't call and tell you, "I'm going to be breaking into your house at 3 a.m. Anybody ever caught a burglar in your house? Did you? Did you really? Was it a relative? No. Was it Andrew?
No, Andrew caught him.
Andrew caught him?
Well, no, we were in the house. My mom was downstairs, but he was still in the meat out of the fridge.
No kidding. Well, he must have needed it, don't you think?
He dropped it all the way down the alley.
Oh my gosh. All right, anybody else catch a burglar? Mike?
Yeah, when I was a little kid, we grew up in the West Side Projects. They broke into our house twice. Once when we were there, we were sleeping. And then once when we came home, they ran out the back.
Man. Wow.
That's why we moved out of the West Side. It was crazy.
What, you'd think that was the east side you're talking about, don't you? You were on the east side. Okay, that's what I figured. That makes more sense. Anybody else? Julie.
This is just recent, last month.
Really?
Somebody broke in my basement and we broke in to go sleep in my house.
Really?
And the cops caught him down there.
Oh, man.
Last month.
Julie, well, you know what? You keep a nice house. I don't blame him.
It's the north side.
It's the north side. Yeah, it's the north side. They're friendly thieves. He didn't take anything.
No, the cops took him though.
Jesus said, "You also must be ready, because the Son of Man will come in an hour when you don't expect him." The most dangerous day in a person's life is when we learn that there's such a thing as tomorrow. We don't know when. And we don't know how. In what way will God come? To Abraham and Sarah, visitors arrive and they have dinner with the old man and his wife, and it isn't until they leave that Abraham realizes one of them is the Lord. With Moses, a bush burns, a voice speaks. It's God. The boy Samuel hears a voice calling his name as he lies on a mat in the tabernacle, but he thinks it's the high priest. He goes on for 3 times before he realizes the voice belongs to the Lord. The disciples in a boat see something in the mist and scream, "It's a ghost." And it isn't until later, when he's in the boat with them, that they know it was Jesus. Mary Magdalene cries, "They've taken away my Lord. I don't know where they put him." And a voice says, "Mary, it's Jesus." You and I could say the same thing. Praying with someone at the end of a service. Once on the street talking to a stranger. Giving out a basket last Tuesday night to somebody. As Luke said last week, maybe holding a baby. We don't know when God will come to us. One young mother remarked, I didn't think I believed in God until we had the baby. And suddenly, I had to have someone to thank. We never know how God will come to us, maybe even in this very room. Jesus said, I don't know when, I don't know how, but I do know this. I know that God will come. I know that God will come. As Dr. Craddock put it, if you think there's no one out there, if you think you're alone in the world, if you think that the only response you get to an anguished prayer is the echo of your own voice, then you're certainly worshiping a God different from the one I know, said Jesus. God will come. In fact, that's the nature of God. That's why we celebrate Advent. God is one who comes to us quietly or loudly, alone or in groups, in church, in the mountains, at work, in court, in prison, on the highways, somewhere, somehow. God always comes to bless our lives. So there's a reason for hope. There's a future because God will come. Again, quoting Dr. Craddock, what we have to understand, though, according to the teaching of Jesus, is that it won't be obvious to everybody. Not until the end of the age, when Jesus comes back once and for all. Then it will be obvious. Until then, he won't come overpowering us by his presence. At least not most of the time. Someone can always say, no, that wasn't the Lord. When is God coming? And how is God coming? You know what would really be surprising is if God were to come to us in the most unlikely form. Suppose God were to come to us as a baby born into a Jewish family. Now, wouldn't that be something? When is God coming? What's he telling us? First, once in a while, we just have to say what we believe he did in our lives. Once in a while, we just have to say that. Even if people will dispute it. Even if people say that wasn't God. Once in a while, we have to say that. Second, God is full of surprises. So we've got to be alert for him. He will come in unusual shapes at unusual times. In unusual places. Jesus, in the very next chapter that we studied this morning, will say that when he comes back, he'll tell some that I was hungry, naked, in prison, a stranger, even an alien, and you turned your back on me. When, they will ask, and he'll reply, whatever you did or did not do for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did or did not do for me. I want to finish with a story. It's about Martin of Tours. He lived in the 4th century. He was a young Roman soldier and he was a seeker of the Christian faith, but he kept God at arm's length. One day he met an unclothed man, nude, begging for alms in the freezing cold, and Martin stopped and he cut his coat in two and he gave half to the stranger. That night, he dreamed that he saw the heavenly court with Jesus robed in a torn cloak. One of the angels present said, "Master, why do you wear that battered cloak?" Jesus replied, "My servant Martin gave it to me." Martin's disciple and his biographer states that as a consequence of this vision, Martin flew to be baptized the next day. Once in a while, we need to say what we believe happened in our lives. Number two, God is full of surprises, so we have to be alert for Him. He will come. Not always as we expect. And finally, we need to receive the Christ who definitely came to us one time in a manger 2,000 years ago. Please stand.